Previously, on a podcast that wasn't Hoth Topics.
We've got more guests coming up, and Ian, you are more than welcome to come back as a guest at any time. And if you're ever looking for a guest for Hoth Topics, just you have my contact information.
Absolutely, yeah, that'd be a great time.
Absolutely
We'll get something set up there. Some cross promotional podcast universe building stuff.
I've got that on record now. You cannot back out of that. I will take you to court over it. I will take you to court over it. I will take you to court over it. I will.
Greetings, exalted ones, and welcome back to another episode of Hoth Topics, a podcast about Star Wars. I am a librarian of the Jedi Archives, Ian. Joining me, as always, is a security chief at the Imperial Records Office, John, and for the first time transmitting across the Atlantic Ocean, Professor of Galactic Pop Culture at Theed University, Harry from the Ranked List of Everything joins us. Harry, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very, very excited to be here at this very special Hoth Topics broadcast. I've studied many years in great Star Wars things over in the land of the Brits, and very happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you very much for being on. I very much enjoyed my time on your podcast, where we also ended up talking about Star Wars. That's not entirely what it's about.
It's not entirely what it's about, but we have had many episodes where we've spoken about Star Wars on that podcast, actually. I think it's probably the biggest recurring topic, but of course it would be, because Star Wars is such a fantastic topic. Why would you not talk about Star Wars? I mean, it's sort of that, if you're going to have a conversation, why wouldn't you talk about Star Wars?
That kind of goes to show how important and how big Star Wars as, you know, a fandom, as a community is, to even have that amount of conversation that, you know, not necessarily has to be about Star Wars. It always kind of has a little bit of Star Wars in it.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, because Star Wars is just a cultural phenomenon, and I'd like to think that there are very few things that could compare to how big Star Wars is pretty much globally.
It's definitely one of those things that has transcended borders and time, really, at this point. It's a decades-old franchise that we're still introducing people to.
Absolutely. And, like, I do want to briefly discuss about that whole sort of how well Star Wars has fared over that space of time, because that's also something I want to talk about in comparing it to something else in Britain that I grew up with, which I feel like if it didn't exist, Star Wars would have been even bigger over here before the new trilogy came out. But that's something I want to talk about later. That's something I've been thinking about a little bit. That's a little sizzle there for you guys.
Little sizzle.
I'm excited.
Keep on listening. Oh yeah, I'm excited as well. So I'm thinking I did a good job there. So clap on the back. Well done. Good on me.
There you go. You know what? That's we can't hope to get any better than that. So the sizzle is going to be better than the topic. This is what you've done. Raise the anticipation way too high. I don't know if I can handle it.
Well, you know what? You don't have any choice, because you're gonna have to handle it. You're gonna have to handle it, or you drop it. And if you drop it, I'll handle it, and then give it back to you so that you can handle it some more. That's the workflow that things are going to go here. It's going to be a circle until you end up handling it.
Are we playing rugby?
I'm not quite sure. I think so, and I want to thank you for recognizing rugby instead of American football. I'm well pleased about that.
I am a man of the world. I am.
Oh yeah. No, you know what rugby is. You know what true American football is. All right, good to know. Just going to leave that there. Let's move on.
Wow. Okay. Good thing our podcast doesn't have a lot of sports crossover. So, Harry, you are the host of a podcast called The Ranked List of Everything, and it's a very cool idea that I very much enjoyed being on. Why don't you go over a little bit about what the Ranked List of Everything is, because I do want to bring up a couple items on the Ranked List.
Oh, okay. Well, yes, I'll tell you all briefly about the Ranked List of Everything. Some may call it a podcast, and some may call it a social experiment if you were feeling pretentious and also felt like lying. It's basically a show where each week, I say week, I missed about a month, but we're back on track now. We're releasing episodes every week. Tell you what, let me put it like this. It's probably the easiest way. John, I'll talk to you about this. John, have you got a list of your top 5 favorite films?
Yes, I mean, they're mostly Star Wars.
That's completely fine. Now, have you got a list of your bottom 5 favorite films?
I don't think I've ever
for the sake of the for the sake
Oh,
of the explanation,
yes,
say
totally.
yes.
Yeah, okay, great.
Totally
Now, if
good.
you put those things together, you've now got a list of 10 things in a ranked order from best to worst.
That does make sense. The math checks out.
It does make sense. Now, if you do the exact same thing for songs and then push those together, unfairly compare all your favourite songs with all your favourite films. Now you've got a list of 20 things. Now do that for every single thing in the world. That's what we're doing here. We have got a ranked list that we add to every week of the best and worst things ever. We objectively and unfairly compare things that should never be compared. For example, we compare Michael Jackson with the Fallout games. We compare Pineapple on Pizza to Capes. And we compare Star Wars to Kiss from a Rose by Seal. We compare literally everything, and it's a bit of a thing to see what literally the best thing and literally the worst thing in the world is. We want to stop arguments by saying, do you prefer this? Well, you're wrong. Sorry. That's sort of the idea.
It's the definitive list that we could all reference in the future whenever we have an argument.
Whenever you have an argument and you want to see, okay, well, which is better? Let's find out. Go to the ranked list and go, well, there you go. I'm right. Go jump off a cliff, please. That's sort of the idea.
Very good. It's a fantastic idea, and I've been very much enjoying following it. Now, you do have 3 Star Wars-related items on the list, and I wanted to get both you as the curator of the list, let's say. I wanted to get your opinions of why they are where they are, and John, I wanted to get your input on it as well. So, at the moment, the list currently, the list as a listener, not behind the scenes, the list as I know it, in its current incarnation, has 37 items on it. Right off the bat, Star Wars, just Star Wars, the concept and everything involved.
Everything about Star Wars, all the good and all the bad.
It is currently ranked at number 5 on the ranked list of everything. Under Skyrim, Dogs, The Introduction of a Lifelong Passion, and Amazing, Passionate, Mind-Blowing Lovemaking.
That's the one, yeah.
So, Harry, what made you put Star Wars, because you are the ultimate voice on the ranked list. You have the final decision, except for that one time where you phoned a friend and took my top reigning topic of Introduction to a Lifelong Passion and pushed it downwards.
It was a tough decision.
On a whim.
The hardest decisions require the strongest wills. I don't know if we're allowed to quote Marvel movies on a Star Wars podcast, but
It's all Disney.
It's all Disney.
That's all good then. That's all good. So yeah, Star Wars there at number 5. Like I say, with the list, I try and be either as vague as you like or as specific as you like. So even though we've got Star Wars on the list, we could add maybe the Star Wars films as another entry, and that could potentially get higher. But Star Wars as a whole, I've put on the list, and it possibly could go higher, but for the fact that there's a lot of stuff which isn't quite as good in Star Wars as well. And I think the first thing that comes to mind when you think things that aren't quite as good in Star Wars is probably the infamous Holiday Special, which is actually one of my favorite bad films of all time.
I'm right there with you, Harry.
It certainly is a bad film. John, when did you first show me the Holiday Special?
It's when we did the marathon of the Ewok movies and the Holiday Special.
Yep.
Which I don't think we actually made it through the second Ewok movie.
No, we did. I remember finishing it because the second Ewok movie was the one where I was like, oh, this actually feels kind of like a Star Wars movie. Like a bad one, but it feels like a Star Wars movie and not a
Ewok movie
production set on Endor.
But yeah, so there's a lot of stuff which isn't quite as good in Star Wars, which I think drags down its overall rating. But the reason it gets so high on that list, and like as I say, I'm a few episodes ahead because I've filmed ones that haven't gone out yet, but it's still very high on the list just because there are so many fantastic things in Star Wars. But got to consider the middle ground, you know, because even like Star Wars as a whole, there's so much to it that you can be overwhelmed with the good stuff and just sort of ignore the stuff that wasn't that great.
I would 100% agree with that. John, how do you feel about Star Wars ranking 5th?
I feel that there are things that are better in this world than Star Wars.
Shock horror.
Even though I'm on I know, right? So I think it's still in the top 5, just barely. So I'm okay with it.
as long as it stays in that top 5, you're happy with it being there. Okay,
because Harry, you're right. You're 100% right. There are things in Star Wars that aren't that great, that do drag it down a bit. It's not like the perfect franchise.
One couldn't exist.
But as you said, we can ignore the stuff that's bad and just focus on the good and keep it in that top 5.
I'll do my best. I can't make any promises at all. I have to be an impartial judge. But I mean, I say impartial judge. I feel like an impartial judge would probably put Skyrim lower, but there we go. Yeah, Star Wars, absolutely fantastic. And like you say, just ignore the bad stuff rather than force people off Twitter because of it. It's just big things, little things, big things, whatever you like. I didn't want to bring up the toxic fandom already, but there you go, just did it.
Well, let's jump then. We'll come back to the middle ground, the perfect middle of Star Wars in terms of all things.
It is really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's meh above all else. There's another sizzle for you. But going down to the bottom of the list, you had a guest on recently. It was Phil Better of the Phil Better Show. And he, not only did he take the top spot on the ranked list of everything with his entry, he also took the bottom. It pains me that this has to do with Star Wars as much as it does.
Yeah.
But toxic fan bases is currently at the bottom of the list. Now, John, you and I have both addressed this topic multiple times through some articles and the podcast itself. Are you surprised at all that this has made it to the bottom of the list?
Not at all. And I completely agree that it's at the bottom of the list because it doesn't just affect, Star Wars. It affects everything. And I've been guilty of it.
I think we all have a little bit.
With the music communities that I grew up with in high school, like once you're in there for a little bit, then everyone else is a poser and you like rag on all the new kids growing up. And, like, instead of, taking them under your wing and being like, hey, this is how we do things, or like, this is what's good, this is what's not as good, instead of just bashing people. So like anything like that, almost encourages attacking people that are just trying to get into something, that sucks and deserves to be at the bottom.
Things like that, I think, often are inevitable in life. But it's when people really take it that step further. And I think the only reason that this does happen in things like Star Wars is because Star Wars is massive. It is one of the most popular things in the world. And when you have something that's massively popular and something which can divide opinions very easily, because obviously Star Wars has been through... just the main Star Wars series has been through 3 very, very different tones since it started. And you'll always get people who prefer each of those tones over the other. And when you get that many people all loving this one thing that they can't all agree is the same thing, you're going to get that vocal minority who always just take it that one step too far and have to start bringing this really vile hate into it.
With the age of social media as it is, it's very hard to distinguish that vocal minority from the majority. Luckily, we've had people, other podcasts that we know of, the Star Wars community itself, yourself on your own podcast, Harry, that have been able to kind of reach out and remind everybody that, hey, you know what, this is a minority of people. They just have a really big megaphone and they like to push the shiny red button a lot.
Yeah.
So, but I absolutely agree. Toxic fan bases belongs at the bottom. I agree with what you said in your episode, Harry. I think that's going to stay there for a long time.
It's tough to beat. It's certainly tough to beat.
If we want to go like super abstract, which I won't do here because, I want to save it in case we get on the ranked list again. But
you absolutely will.
There are totally things that could beat it on like a really entropic, cosmic, horrible scale. But in terms of everyday life, toxic fan bases are pretty bad.
They are pretty bad. And unlike the bad parts of Star Wars, they're slightly harder to ignore when they're screaming in both your ears. Yeah, which is the reason that they're so annoying. I mean, it'd be great if there was just an off button and we could ignore them. But the fact that it is more difficult to ignore them when you want to be engaged as a community, if you want to be engaged as a community and there are those people who want to try and make that a little bit more toxic, that's what really sucks.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Because otherwise it'd be easy to just ignore them. Just don't look at their Twitters, don't look at that. But the thing is that you want to communicate with other people who love what you love. But sadly, they're involved in that. That's the big issue that I find.
Yeah, that's a really good way of looking at it. Very well put. Well, let's move away from the pits, scum and villainy that is toxic fan bases, and move on to what is probably the most middle ground Star Wars topic that has ever been discussed heavily. Sitting at number 24 on the list, very middle ground, is Tauntauns.
Yep, Tauntauns. I mean,
Now-
what can you say about Tauntauns?
A lot more can be said about Tauntauns than I expected to be said about Tauntauns. Let me tell you that much.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I remember this was the entry that I posed to you when you guessed it on my podcast, wasn't it, Ian?
Correct, and I was surprised and intrigued. So how did you come up with Tauntauns as an entry for the list of everything?
Well, I obviously think that Star Wars is great. I love watching the old Star Warses, and the popular opinion, let's say, is that Empire Strikes Back is one of the best. So I went through and I thought, right, I want to pose a Star Wars entry to this fantastic Star Wars guest. So I went through and I watched Empire Strikes Back, and I was watching the bit where Han Solo cuts open a Tauntaun and puts Luke inside of one, and he was like, wow, and I thought they smelled bad on the outside, and I sat back and I went, ha ha, that's funny. And then I thought, yes, Tauntauns, that's what I'm going to add. And then it was only when recording with you that I realised that Tauntauns break Star Wars canon. A Tauntaun is classified as a lizard. Lizards are reptiles. Reptiles are cold-blooded. On the inside, would it be that warm? It absolutely breaks Star Wars, which is pretty big news, and I don't think many people have picked up on it, to be honest, because, Luke Skywalker died there in Empire Strikes Back. It's very much a Grease-type scenario where all of the films since have been his fever dream before dying. Yeah.
Now, the question remains, in the series, he dies at the end of episode 8. Now, will episode 9 still be his fever dream? Is he actually still alive and dreaming he's a ghost?
Okay, so episode 9 is going to be, he's a Force ghost, right? He comes back as a Force ghost, and we're going back to Empire Strikes Back. The films start all over again, but instead of Luke being a person, he's just a Force ghost. The story is the exact same, but he's a Force ghost.
Whoa, mind blowing.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
They're just going to do it. They're going to do that infinitely now.
John, opinions.
I feel like Darth Vader fighting a Force ghost and chopping off a Force ghost's hand may be a little bit of a stretch.
Nah, he just feels bad for Darth Vader because Darth Vader doesn't realize, and he's just swinging at his arm, going, "Oh, why isn't this working?" And Luke sees it, he's frustrated, and he's like, "Oh, Dad, come on, this isn't." You know what? They go, "Oh, my hand! Oh no! Ah!" That's what happens. I've seen the script, guys. Don't worry.
You heard it here first, folks. Breaking news.
They're going for that double numbering now as well. They're calling it episode 9-5 because we're going all the way back round. It's going to be very confusing, but people will be happy because Luke is back, apparently. I don't know. Something will make them happy one day. I'm sure it will.
People being happy, I don't understand. How does that work?
No, we'll have to argue about it for a few more years.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me. Sounds good to me.
And that's something that came back around, really, is like you said, John, we'll have to argue about it for a few more years. As of right now, the prequel movies are, at least in the fandom, are not nearly as hotbeds of toxicity as they were. I think nowadays, with time, we've been able to go, hey, you know what? These were movies. They happened.
They were.
They happened to us, and we have to deal with it and live with it. And personally, I enjoy them. They're not bad.
Yeah, no, I sit down and watch Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, and I can sit there and go, ha, yeah, I like sand. And it's pretty good. I have a fun time with it.
Has something to do with the generation that grew up with those movies being the ones that are talking about it more now. When the prequels came out, I was, I remember talking to the kids that were younger than me that loved the movies, and I enjoyed them when they came out. But a lot of my brother, who's 10 years older than me, who grew up with the old movies, he didn't like them and wasn't as vocal as those on social media today are, because that my brother's generation didn't have that platform. But yeah, I think it's been a very interesting swing since the Disney acquisition to the prequels aren't nearly as bad as the Disney movies sort of thing you see on Twitter and on the Facebooks nowadays. So I wonder if when Rian Johnson's trilogy comes out, if people will be going back and going, the sequel trilogy wasn't that bad.
It's an interesting thing you brought up, John, about the platform being not there. When I was in the process of writing one of my op-eds about the toxic fandom, I had mentioned toxic attempt. We're back on the toxic fan basis. I promise we won't be here long. How the toxic things, like a lot of what was being said, didn't have the same platform. Like, we weren't talking about it as much. We weren't talking about the toxicity as much back then, even though it was happening to. And I rattled off a number of characters, including Ahmed Best. And when you were proofreading the article, you were like, did Ahmed Best get as much hate as, like, we knew the character got a lot of hate. We weren't so sure about the man behind it himself. And it's been really interesting to see in the current social media age how much of that is coming back out. Ahmed Best has a series out right now on his YouTube channel called Field Notes, where he just kind of has this very raw conversation with the audience about his experiences. It's interesting to me that things were just as bad, just not heard of as much.
Yeah. Well, no, absolutely. I mean, I feel like this has been this way forever. And the people can look back in hindsight and realize, well, why the hell were we so angry? Yeah. I mean, the example that I love to use is in the 1980s, Spider-Man got his black suit. And everyone hated it with a passion. They were like, what the hell is this? Where's our Spider-Man? So they got rid of it. And then people were like, oh, this was great. We loved the black suit. What the hell are you doing? People just like to be outraged at things. They feed off it.
That's true. Bringing up comics there. Now, Harry, you are a big comic reader. It's a topic that comes up a lot in conversations on your podcast. And you co-host another podcast about comics, correct?
Yes, I do, I think. Yeah. Comic Corner, Elsie's Comic Corner. I also co-host, and we talk about comic book.
Have you been reading any of the new Marvel Star Wars comics?
I actually haven't. I've got the first 2 trade paperbacks, so the first 10 issues, which I'm going to start reading at some point. But I've always been slightly wary. And this is a weird thing, actually, as someone who's a fan of Star Wars, but not nearly as big a fan as like you guys, or maybe a lot of your listeners. I don't know nearly as much about it, because I'm sitting here with these comics and I'm sort of going, right, well, I know there's all this other stuff. There's this expanded universe stuff. I know there are all these Vader comics. I know that there's the Clone Wars series, which I haven't seen. I know there's the Rebel series, which I haven't seen. Where's the best place to start? Because I really don't know, where do I want to go in? Can I just start anywhere? Will there be references to other things that I'm not going to understand?
That is a very good point. And I think that's one of the things about Star Wars, where it's such a massive, like, once you get into it, there's so much, even as crazy into it as we are. Like, there are novels out there that I haven't read, bits and pieces of lore that I'm still struggling to be like, okay, which novel do I pick up first? Where do I start with this or that or the other? John, what do you think about where the best place to start diving into those sort of EU or new canon?
That is a incredibly difficult question because of the 2 existing universes that they've created.
Right.
Where some of the stuff in the old books, even though the books may not be canon anymore, but some of the stuff is canon. It's kind of a very strange minefield to walk when going through the new media. Because I used to read a lot of the old books, and I'll read some of the new books, and I'll think they'll be referencing something in, like, let's say, Chusep Akura or something like that, and you're like, oh, that's not even canon. They can't be referencing that, but then they are. But I think Marvel has been doing a pretty good job of keeping some of that new extended universe stuff, keeping that information pretty what's the word I'm looking for? Like, upfront, I guess.
Self-contained,
accessible.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And then, luckily, with the internet, I mean, if you don't know, you just go on Wikipedia.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Like, I didn't know how many breeds of Tauntaun there were until I listened to your episode.
Too many breeds of Tauntauns. That's how many there are.
I agree with you, John. I think that the Marvel comic series is a really good place to start to get into it. Mostly, one of the big reasons, I think, is because it takes place in the Galactic Civil War era that we're all the most familiar with. I think the comics start in between episodes 4 and 5, so in between A New Hope and Empire.
All
And
right.
so you know what's going on in A New Hope, and if all you've seen is A New Hope, you can go through the comics and read them and just have a good sense of the characters. So once you do get into Star Wars comics, Harry, I'd be very interested to hear what you think of it as both a fan of Star Wars and a fan of comics, because I've very much been enjoying it. And I think that I'm kind of the inverse of you, where instead of comics really being the big thing and Star Wars just being something I like, Star Wars is the big thing for me. And
Yeah.
comics are something that, I'm not as deep into, but I still enjoy.
Well, I'll definitely start reading them soon then, and I will tweet my thoughts over at you guys for the
Awesome.
world to see. Yeah, and see what we think of that, because that does sound the type of thing that I'd like to see. I've also heard the Vader comic is fantastic.
Oh,
That's
so
another
good.
one that I want to pick up.
It's really good. I have the 2 hardcover collected
Oh yeah,
ones, which I think are 20 issues piece, something like that.
yeah, those ones I definitely want to pick up.
Yeah, the Vader comic is great, and I recently picked up the hardcover for the main Star Wars run. Those are both very good as well. Yeah,
I don't think that the changes in the canon are some of the unknown things you might not be following with, Harry. I don't think they'll be as difficult for you if you're used to the galactic resets like constantly every few years.
I guess the biggest thing that I'm worried about is things being spoiled for me. Like if I suddenly get a reference to an arc that happened in something I was supposed to read or watch, and everyone's like, "Oh, you should watch this, but no spoilers," and then suddenly this throwaway line has just spoiled everything to me. And the reason I'm so worried is because I'm big on comics, and that's happened to me so many times in comics. Like someone will just say, "Oh yeah, you remember that time that Spider-Man was killed brutally?" And I'm like, "What? No, I was going to read that next." Yeah. So I guess that's my biggest worry in a way.
I think that they've handled it very well in that there are 1 or 2 references to things that happen, like, say, maybe in the Clone Wars or the TV shows, but I don't think they're so blatant as to be qualified as spoilers. They're more like,
if you know it, then you'll recognize it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And if you don't know it, it might be I want to learn more about that.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, that's certainly that will certainly be a segue into me enjoying Star Wars comics, and maybe I'll even start watching the animated shows if I enjoy those enough. Who knows?
The animated shows are really interesting because they've announced a final season of Clone Wars is going to be released next year. John and I are currently going through the Clone Wars series again. Speaking for myself, when I first started watching the Clone Wars, I was very much like, what is this? It's different. Get it away from me. I don't understand. And then through time and just watching it, I began to really enjoy it. And then they came out with Rebels, and Rebels came out, and I was like, oh, it's different again. It's more different again. Get it away from me. I don't like it. And then I started watching it, and then I was like, oh, this is actually really good. And so for some reason, I just keep having that reaction.
Yeah, indeed.
Clone Wars took a long time for me to get into. It's just their animation style in the first couple seasons wasn't as refined as it was later in the season. When I was starting to be able to look past their weird 3D cell shaded sort of look and focus more on the story and the characters, it became almost one of my favorite Star Wars media. Even above the movies, because you got so much more character development than you could in the movies because it was a serialized television show that lasted many seasons. And it made me appreciate Revenge of the Sith even more, because with Clone Wars, we finally get all this character development with Anakin that we really needed in the movies, but there just wasn't enough time to show the conflict in him that made him choose why he went the way he did, or why he was always so aggressive as a Jedi. Clone Wars, at the end of it, well, I guess it's not technically the end of it now. It really changed my point of view on his character. And with Rebels, because it took place during the Galactic Civil War, the part of Star Wars I like the most, I was just excited to see stormtroopers running around shooting things, because that's my favorite part of Star Wars.
Yeah, that's what you want to see, isn't it?
Yeah.
I will say this, Harry, are you a fan of the lightsaber?
I am a fan of the lightsaber, yeah.
Okay. Clone Wars has some of the best lightsaber fights I have ever seen.
It's got a lot of Grievous, hasn't it?
Not just Grievous, it's got a lot of Grievous. It's got lots of Obi-Wan and Anakin and Yoda and other Jedi. You wouldn't really. What's the guy, Krell, John, the really grumpy general who's got.
Oh, he dual wields double bladed lightsabers.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, it's
That
ridiculous.
guy's ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah, he's this giant four-armed alien dude. You remember Dex from Attack of the Clones? He's that guy's species, so he's got the four arms and everything.
That is terrifying.
Yeah, and he's a pretty haunting character too. That's probably one of the best arcs in the Clone Wars. But...
Well, you guys are listing all of these fantastic characters and their lightsaber fights. It actually gives a bit of a segue into what I wanted to talk about, unless you guys wanted to move on to something else first.
No, please. It's organic listening. That's what we're going for here.
And then I edit
it.
Yeah. Now, I thought you guys might find it quite interesting, my experience with how I first got into Star Wars and how I became a fan. Given
that was my next question.
Given that I am a touch younger than you guys, and also I've grown up in an entirely different country where Western culture is very much similar, but the type of entertainment we generally prefer is a lot of the time different. So the very, very first experience I had with Star Wars, before I even knew what Star Wars was, I had the Lego Star Wars game, the very first one on PlayStation 2 or Xbox. Maybe it was Xbox. Have either of you guys ever played that?
Let's see, the original Lego Star Wars game. I think I've only played one Lego Star Wars game in my life.
So this Lego Star Wars game only covered the prequel trilogy. So it was only episodes 1 to 3. And you'd basically play through each level. And there was no dialogue. Absolutely none. So there was hardly any written text either. It would have the opening scrolls, and that was it. So I played through the prequels with absolutely no dialogue. So as you can assume, if you tried to watch the prequel trilogy muted, you would have no idea what was going on. You'd have absolutely no clue. So I was sitting here as a kid going, right, I don't know what the hell the story is, but this looks sick. I mean, there are these people with glowy swords shooting at each other. I don't know who this kid in the first one is. He's kind of annoying, though. Just flying planes. This is brilliant. I absolutely love this. So that was my only experience with Star Wars for such a long time. After that, I sort of started to become aware of what lightsabers were, sort of started to become aware of what stormtroopers were, but I'd still never watched any of the films, and I didn't know that there were 6 films. I thought maybe there was Luke Skywalker. I thought the original trilogy was the prequel trilogy that I played through, to be perfectly honest. Because the big thing in the UK, if you wanted to go to sci-fi, and this was before 2005 where the 9th Doctor came in, it was Doctor Who. We didn't need to look any further. Doctor Who was the big old thing that we could look to for our sci-fi fix. And I can't imagine that was what it was like in America, because Doctor Who only really blew up in about 2010 for you guys, didn't it?
Yeah, it was around that time. In fact, I didn't really even get into it until I think, John, you were actually the person who was like, "Hey, go watch Doctor Who."
You see, that's the thing. I mean, if we ever thought sci-fi, or this is just maybe, if we ever thought sci-fi, we think of the blue box that let you travel through space and time, because that just seemed like the most sci-fi you could get. So it was only a little bit later on, I must have been maybe about 12 before I actually watched a Star Wars film. But I went to a small chalet, I watched them on VHS, God forbid, and I watched the original trilogy all back to back and just sort of went, oh my God, that's actually amazing. So I went out and get them on Blu-ray the next year and just binged it all.
Important question. When you watched the VHSs, did you watch the special editions or the original cuts?
I think they must have been the original cuts, but I know on the Blu-ray, when I rewatched them again, I was like, I don't remember Jabba in New Hope. That's weird.
Oh, okay. No, I was fishing for somebody else who was introduced to them in the special editions, like I was. Because I seem to be. Quite. Yeah, I seem to be alone in that. Whoever I talk to, there must be more of them out there. I just haven't met them yet.
I'm sure there are dozens of you out there in the world. But yeah, I just found that, and I mean, everyone who I talk to from America, it was always sci-fi was, maybe Star Trek was there in the background, but Star Wars was the big thing. That was the timeless classic. But when someone says timeless sci-fi to me, my mind still goes to Doctor Who, which has been going since 1962, and obviously isn't as big as Star Wars is now. But
it's literally timeless.
It's literally timeless. That's the thing about it. And I think the thing about Doctor Who is it managed to survive a lot easier with a little bit less of a toxic fan base than Star Wars has. Not just because it's less popular, but also because it's far easier to retcon stories and just go in completely new directions since they changed the cast 3 years anyway. Whereas Star Wars, they're all going to be like, not my Luke, and that's it. They'll just keep doing that all over and over again.
Reincarnate the Star Wars characters.
Yeah. But,
now,
well, you could try. People won't be happy, but you can try.
I don't know if you know, Harry, but I have significant issues with time travel as a narrative concept.
I think you've mentioned, yeah.
But I do really enjoy Doctor Who precisely because of how they treat it, because it's just like, hey, this is just a thing. Like they built their story around traveling through time and space, and just like the rules are loose and purposely so.
Yeah, they just sort of go, just don't think about it. Just live with it.
It would be interesting to know, because recently they announced the new Doctor. What's her name? Yeah, Jodie Whittaker playing. Oh wow, that's soon, huh?
Yeah, pretty soon.
It's like a month away. Yeah. Jodie Whittaker playing, and I remember a little bit of hoopla about that. All the sludge rising up and going, she doesn't have a penis. It's evil.
It's wrong. Where's the penis?
Save that clip.
Save that clip.
It was a much bigger thing in the UK, I think, than America. It was all over newspaper headlines, in the news, everything like that. Because, that and James Bond, those are our two big British culture things.
Was there more backlash to that?
Almost definitely there was more backlash than there was in America, but that's only because I think there were more responses. Like, for every person who came out in backlash, there was someone who came out thinking, why the hell are you upset about this? Like, there's been so many people in support of it. And I think now, which I think it's finally phased out to the point where if you go on a Doctor Who Facebook post, you'll see maybe one comment saying about how she's a woman, and then 3 million replies saying, you're a dumbo, go away. So I think it's pretty much gone now, which hasn't quite happened with Star Wars posts yet, unfortunately.
No, dear.
Yeah. We'll get there eventually.
Do you think it was the issue was that it was a male Time Lord regenerating to a female body, or it was a female Doctor specifically? Because didn't the Master regenerate as a woman already?
Yeah.
5 years.
Yeah, he already did that in the last season. It's people having an issue with the woman being a doctor, saying that they're removing a role model for boys, which in itself is incorrect. But people just getting outraged because it's different, to be honest.
Gentlemen, are you trying to tell me that you can look back into a series' history and see them repeat some patterns, but people will be mad at them later on? I don't believe that.
Who'd have thought? God, I don't know if you'd have met anyone else whose introduction to Star Wars came later than they thought it would have, because it was being hidden by another sci-fi giant such as Doctor Who.
It's a fascinating cultural look. It's getting big here now. It's been big for a couple of years. Like, I can't get on the freeway here and not see some sort of Doctor Who related, my other car is a TARDIS bumper sticker somewhere. Yeah, it's they're everywhere. And then you walk into any Barnes and Noble, like they usually have a little table with Doctor Who stuff every once in a while.
Oh, jeez.
I didn't really realize how eclipsing that would be and it makes sense because it isn't Doctor Who. How old is Doctor Who? It is.
We had the
60?
50th anniversary in 2012. So
okay,
yeah, it's pretty old.
So yeah, it's even more established than Star Wars, really.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But even though they can't really be compared because they're very different things. Star Wars has had television shows, and Doctor Who has had a movie of sorts. But, when it comes down to it, Doctor Who is a TV show and Star Wars is a series of movies. And I just find it very interesting that, for me, Star Wars was sort of hidden by Doctor Who. Maybe it wasn't that big over here before the new trilogy started. I didn't even hear about when they announced the new trilogy. I just saw the Force Unleashed trailer and I was like, oh, wow, they're making new ones. But, to put it into perspective, how late I got to Star Wars, I think that I watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer before I ever watched a Star Wars movie.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. That's how late I got into it.
I love hearing about how people get introduced to Star Wars, and then I also love forcing people to be introduced to Star Wars. Jumping onto that same line of thought, now that you have become a fan of Star Wars in your own right, is there sort of anything that you notice that is different between fans in the UK and fans, say, in the US, where it's probably the biggest?
I mean, for the one thing, there are certainly more fans in the US, and like I've only ever been to the US in years where I can experience it once. Like I only understand a lot of the way your culture works through the internet, which I mean, I guess you'd experience.
I'm sorry.
Anyway. But I think I really don't know about what to say. I mean, I think it doesn't come down to Star Wars, but one of the big things is that you guys tend to go all out a little bit more. Like, don't you dress up to go to midnight premieres and stuff?
Yeah. John is actually, in my opinion, quite the accomplished costume designer and creator.
Mm.
And he's got several Star Wars related projects that he's done for himself and friends and myself as well.
But yeah, I mean, I like you guys will cosplay at midnight premieres of films quite regularly. Whereas, and I live in London, so if it was going to happen anywhere, it's going to happen in London. And I'll go to the IMAX midnight screening of The Last Jedi, and there'll maybe be a guy in a brown dressing gown, but like we don't do that here. And I don't know whether that's like, oh, well, yes, I'm very British. I don't know Star Wars. What's that? But it is very much the same way you wouldn't say hello to someone in the street, even if you were friends with them for 3 years and the last time you saw them was yesterday. It's not really something that's done, but I think that's more about British culture than anything else. Also, clapping at the end of films, we don't do that.
I find it weird over here too, but
yeah. It's kind of bizarre. To be honest, I think that's definitely like a split thing here. There are people who are into it, and there are other people who are like, eh.
We just don't do it at all here. So it's much easier. To be honest, I feel uncomfortable when people clap when someone tells a joke at a play or something. I'm like, well, they're not done yet. Don't clap them yet. They're still going. But that's just me, to be honest. Yeah, I to be honest, I think that the UK and the US, and we can probably throw Canada and Australia in there as well. Those 4 big Western nations have just sort of under the internet, where Western culture has managed to just sort of conglomerate. I think fandoms have sort of become pretty much the same across most of the Western nations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just about what's bigger where, I suppose. That's the big thing, really.
Yeah, John, you had something on the costumes, I think, right?
On the episode of your show, Harry, that Ian was on, you had mentioned that you'd like the episode about costume and prop making.
Yeah, it was absolutely
fantastic. I was just kind of wondering, if you had the choice of a particular costume, what would it be that you would like to have?
Now, you see, you've put me on the spot here.
Because there's a lot of things, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of things. I'm going to try and just think in terms of Star Wars here.
Well, you see, if there's a lot of things, what you need to do is take them all and compare them in a list format.
That's always been my way of thinking. Well, yeah, who would? What a bloody idiot! Who would think of something like that?
Nobody wants to listen to that. Come on.
Oh, yeah, I don't listen to Star Wars or rank things. I'm British. I don't know. For some reason, the first thing that comes to mind for me, and I don't even think this would be possible, but you know how you get the horse costume where you get someone's the front and someone's the back?
Yep.
Sure.
I think of that with an 80-80.
All right, that's officially the best idea I've ever heard.
I think that'd be pretty great. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but
now I'm already planning that in my brain.
You don't understand what you've done.
I'd love that. And then what I'd do as well is I'd have a little Chewbacca and little Ewok figures on the head, just opening it up to pull something out the top.
Tearing it apart.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Great.
That's what I'd do. And then just sort of walk around the con being really hot and uncomfortable all day and not being able to talk to anyone or do anything without ruining the costume. I think that would be the best way of doing things.
It's almost as if you've been to a con before.
I don't even know how those 2-horse costume work, actually. But That is literally
Somebody's
the
gotta
first thing
back.
that comes to mind for me.
That's a really good idea.
My brain is racing with how to make that happen now.
You don't understand. Like, John's primary costume is an AT-AT commander. Like, he's got like 4 AT-ATs just sitting around his house.
Oh, great! So Ian, me and you can dress up as the AT-AT, and then John can ride on top of us at the con.
Oh,
That'd be great.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna have to make some sort of like metal brace system so we don't like give out.
No, it's going to be a great workout. Trust me. We'll just do a bit of P90 flex beforehand. We'll be in great shape. Don't even worry.
Yeah, well, I've been meaning to lose some weight, so just sweating all day in a 2-person AT-AT costume with a person riding on top of me. Yeah, that'll do it.
That sounds like an amazing con experience. I don't know about you guys, but that sounds pretty great.
That's fantastic.
So yeah, I can't think of anything else. Maybe, I mean, the only ones that are coming to mind are really difficult. A General Grievous one would be very cool.
Oh yeah, that'd be rad.
Where you like moved the lower arms as you move the upper arms. That'd be pretty good.
The way I've seen people do that costume before is they make fake legs and they hide their real legs behind the Grievous's cape. And they just have puppet arms.
Yeah. Oh well, that actually. Let me Google that real quick because I'll be interested.
It's a pretty cool idea.
Yeah,
you say puppet, but all I can think of is the Star Wars Holiday Special right now. Whip, stir.
Oh, 100% like
that. That's my cosplay idea. That one. I want that one. That one sounds great.
What's great about that one, Harry?
Huh?
What's great about that costume, Harry, is that like most people have no idea what you're doing, but the 4 people that do, you just made their day.
Yeah, they'll go.
Those are my favorite costumes.
Oh man,
the ones that are just so obscure, but when people see it, they'll just absolutely appreciate what you've done.
Yeah,
that was like your con costume this year, John.
The Star Tours flight crew.
John made a flight crew uniform based off of the ones in the Disneyland ride Star Tours.
Just super obscure. Love it.
Yeah. And like they're not even like costumes that the cast members at Disneyland wear. They're just like my own version of like the Imperial officer's costume, but like in blue and orange. And then I did a flight attendant's costume for my friend Catherine. We had Star Tours travel brochures that we were giving out. It was awesome. We actually had a Disney employee stop us, and he's like, "This is the coolest thing ever." And that made our day because we're pretty sure because we were using like a lot of bootleg Star Tours merchandise logos. We're like, we're pretty sure we're gonna get asked to take these off. My friend who works at Disneyland was afraid she was gonna lose her job if someone saw her.
Oh dear, those are the best types of costume. But it's always very obvious when you see someone in a costume that they just straight up bought. And like, not that there's anything wrong with that, but you can really, really appreciate when someone took the time to go out, get the materials, and actually put together this ensemble that was their own sort of creative. Okay, this is how I'm going to do this. You can really appreciate when someone's gone and done that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Speaking as someone who I used to be that, buy the costumes guy, and then just watching how much work people put into these things, it's really amazing.
It's crazy. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it if someone gave me 100 years. I'd just give them like a paper mache volcano and say, "Here's my Star Wars cosplay." That'd be it.
I'm Mustafar.
It's Mustafar, yeah. See? There's a little Anakin burning in the lava.
That'd be brilliant, yeah. Yeah, there you go. There's my Star Wars cosplay.
Every time John starts with a costume like project, I'm always like, all right, this is the one. This is the one I'm going to find some way to help and like start being an apprentice and like learning how to do the tricks. And then I watch him work for like 10 minutes. I'm like, I'll hand you the scissors. Like it's.
So to recap, we've decided that the best Star Wars cosplays would be a 2-man AT-AT, the cooking presenter from Star Wars Holiday Special, and Anakin burning to death on a paper mache volcano.
Yeah, you know what?
Absolutely fantastic.
They got 10 years. They got 10 years. They got 10 months till the next Comic-Con. We want to see these costumes. I'm going to be out and looking, listeners. If you are there,
they do competitions, don't they? They like judge to see who had the best cosplay.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like if you nailed a 2-man 80-80, I feel like you're a pretty good shoo-in for winning that.
Oh, absolutely. I'm for this.
Oh,
Or
you have a little
go even
action
further.
figure Luke hanging from the middle.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly. That'd be great.
This is amazing.
See, all these things you can incorporate into it. And then you could just have at the very end of the con, or as you're collecting your board, just someone run up and start tying string around your legs and then fall over into the crowd. That'd be it. That'd be perfect. If you're about to hit second place, they're about to announce a winner and it's not you, just pull that and they'll have to change their mind. No choice.
This is dangerous. This is gonna like be a thing here.
And I forgot we've got John riding on top as well, so 2 for the price of 1. So I'm expecting to see pictures of this when you make it.
Yeah, it's got to be a thing now.
Because I can't make it. You're the one who makes costumes. You can do this, and I expect full credit and full profits. Thank you very much.
I don't know if you have been informed, but going back to the this popped into my head on the Star Wars and Doctor Who thing. Matt Smith has been cast in episode 9.
I saw that. I've heard he's been sort of fan cast since his casting as General Tarkin, which would excite me if I knew who General Tarkin was.
Oh,
no, not Tarkin. Blue guy.
Oh, Admiral Thrawn.
Admiral Thrawn. Yeah, General
Grand
Tarkin,
Admiral
the one in episode 4. What the hell am I talking? Yeah, Admiral Thrawn. I've heard he's been like fan cast as him, but I don't know who he is.
I'm going to have a hard time seeing one of the silliest doctors playing the most like cerebral and like intelligent.
You'd actually be very surprised if you watch the old series. Matt Smith is nowhere near the silliest doctor, like not even close. He's in the top half of seriousness. Yeah. So who's Admiral Thrawn?
Admiral Thrawn is, I don't know if he's the only alien in Imperial service, but he is the highest ranking alien within the Imperial Navy as a Grand Admiral.
Aren't they like really racist?
Yes, which is what makes this like an accomplishment.
Yeah, and that's why like so many people like in the Navy like respect him, because like, the only way he could get there is if the Emperor gave him his personal blessing to be an admiral. So people are scared of him. And his whole thing is that he's like hyper intelligent and he uses a culture's artwork, like he studies artwork of a culture to determine their weaknesses and their strengths.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, he's in the old expanded universe. He was in a series of books called Heir to the Empire that came out a few years after Return of the Jedi when there was like no Star Wars going on. And that series kind of started the whole expanded universe. At least in my opinion, it did. And in the recent canon, they brought him back in the Star Wars Rebels cartoon show with a little bit of change in personality, but he's still that hyper intelligent, study culture to defeat your enemy kind of villain. He's one of those villains, like my favorite kind of villain, which is a villain that truly believes that they're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
You know, those are like the scariest villains because...
Well, from what you describe about him, I'm just going to give my extremely uninformed opinion of Matt Smith being cast as him, if he even has been, because we don't know if he has or not. Actually, would this Admiral guy still be alive in episode 9 or?
See, it's hard to tell because not to spoil anything, but his status is currently unknown.
Right.
So,
okay. Well, Matt Smith, having probably watched a bit more of him than you guys, given that I've watched pretty much the entire 11th Doctor run a few times now, and I don't know if either of you have ever heard of the show called The Crown.
Yes.
Yeah. Have you seen any of it or?
I started watching it. I think I got 3 episodes in and then got distracted, but I'm planning on finishing it. It's very good.
That's fair enough. I mean, it's not my favorite show, but he's a main character in that as well. And from what I've seen of Matt Smith, he also used to be a footballer, so that's something. I think he would, if given the opportunity, he would play evil very, very well. I genuinely think that Matt Smith could be terrifying given the chance. It's just a matter of whether people have typecast him as Doctor Who or not. But I think as soon as if they have cast him as an evil character, as soon as they start seeing him in trailers, I reckon that they'll be able to make that distinction from, oh man, this is actually a really scary guy, because he is talented.
Yeah, I feel like putting Thrawn in episode 9 would be kind of a waste of his character, just because episode 9 needs to wrap up so many storylines.
Yeah, it does.
You know, we need to, and just adding more people into the mix, it can make it muddy. I agree that we need, like, I actually put that question to Steele Saunders of the Steel Wars podcast and he made a really good point where he said, well, you know, we don't really have enough villains right now to, like, kind of second tier villains in the series. You know, we've got Hux and we've got Kylo Ren.
Yeah,
really.
Because Kylo Ren isn't, like, I mean, I'm still hoping that Kylo Ren either completes his arc and becomes good again, or just sort of, like, we get that completion of, like, you're never coming back now. This is
Right.
it for you. Because I still feel like he could be redeemed. I mean, people probably have a different opinion from me, but I'd personally still love to see. I mean, I'd love to see Kylo Ray love sort of expansion. I know it's been hinted at loads of times, and people don't want that, but I want that. I also want what's it called? Finn and Poe. That's the real one I want. If I had to pick, I'd go Finn and Poe.
I look. I am fine with both of those matchups, but you brought this up, so I'm unleashing my rant here and now.
Let's go.
You're wrong in that not a lot of people want to see Rey and Kylo. Everybody wants to see Rey and Kylo. It has gotten to the point where I open both my personal Twitter and the Hoth Topics Twitter, and I will find, like, every 4 posts is something about Reylo. And, like, I am definitely in the minority. And I think I tweeted this out, and one of our listeners was just like, yeah, you're literally the only one. I was like, I'm still holding on to a Rey Finn relationship because I loved their dynamic in The Force Awakens. And I kind of
boyfriend.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm still holding on to that. I know it's not going to happen, but I'm still holding on to it. I wouldn't mind a Finn Poe. I think that would be cool if I don't get my way.
Then you'll settle for Finn Poe.
Yeah, I'll settle for that.
Actually, can I ask you guys, because I haven't had this conversation with anyone else, just because no one else in my life is as big a Star Wars fan as I am, which is saying something, because I'm not even that big of a Star Wars fan, especially compared to you guys. But what was your opinion on the Finn Rose kiss? Because I very much took away from that Finn is not into her at all.
Yeah, that's what I took away from it as well.
Yeah? Same here.
Okay, because I saw so many people being outraged, like, oh, why are they doing Finn and Rose? Oh, it's well developed at all. And I'm like, yeah, that's the point. Like, he didn't expect it the same way we didn't. I mean, I kind of thought that was the whole thing they were going for, personally.
Yeah, so, I agree.
Luke made out with his sister, and they didn't really do anything with that.
Oh, dang!
I always forget about that. Are you saying that you want Finn to get with his sister? Because, I mean, well, I could get behind that. Make Star Wars great again! When people say they miss the original trilogy, we know what they're talking about. You know what they're talking about.
They're not thinking about that scene. They're not thinking about Thomas.
Bringing back that good old brother-sister relationship.
I feel like this was a tangent from a tangent from a tangent.
I think this whole episode is pretty much just going to be a tangent with Harry.
Yeah, got in the title.
I think that's a good wrap-up point.
Yep.
Any last minute things we want to add or talk about real quick, gentlemen?
I want to say that I think Ewan McGregor is one of the best things about Star Wars.
Oh, 120,000% agree.
Just wanted to throw my opinion out there. I mean, I know it wasn't really the place to say so, but I think it's true.
No, there's always time to praise Ewan McGregor.
God. I mean, even
Always.
I don't know if I'd want Obi-Wan film, but
Yeah.
I mean, I would never say no to seeing more of Ewan McGregor.
That's
fantastic.
That's exactly how I feel. I think it probably got cut from the last episode, but I think John and I had that same discussion. It'll probably come up in an EBN, but yeah, he's like, I don't think we need an Obi-Wan film. I would love it if there was one. I don't think it makes sense. It doesn't make sense for it to exist, but I will love it if it does.
It's very true.
The thing I love about Ewan McGregor in Star Wars is that if anybody said anything about recasting a character, it always ends up in an argument about how it's a terrible idea and it will ruin the franchise. But if you bring up Obi-Wan and Ewan McGregor, it's always like the best idea ever. Like, he's the only one that doesn't get hate. And I guess who's the guy playing Chewbacca now? Eunice
Suetamo.
He kind of snuck in there because he's been moving over where Peter Mayhew just isn't able to play the character anymore. But
right.
So like him and Ewan McGregor are the only people that haven't gotten like any flack for being a recasted character.
Mm-hmm.
So good for them.
Yeah, that's actually lead me on to one question I wanted to ask you guys.
Sure.
And that is there anywhere that I can read about or watch a fight between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader that isn't the one in Episode 4? Because I really want to see Obi-Wan, Darth Vader. And, like, I mean, the one in Episode 4, I mean, it's not even a lightsaber fight, really.
Right.
And I just think that would be the most amazing thing. And obviously the closest thing you can compare to that is Obi-Wan and Anakin. But in my eyes, that's still Obi-Wan and Anakin. Anakin doesn't move with that menacing, just terrifying way that Darth Vader does. And I'd love to see a real Obi-Wan Darth Vader. Because I know we got an Obi-Wan Darth Maul in Rebels, even though it was quite short, I heard. I'd love to see a Darth Vader one. I don't know if that fits into canon, though.
It doesn't really. I know that there was a fan project out there where they kind of like digitized and did a what would that fight in Episode 4 have been like if they were fighting like they did in the prequels.
Yeah.
And I've heard it's quite good. I haven't seen the whole thing, but I heard that's quite good. The only thing I can think of, and I'll do some research into this and get back to you, but I think the only thing I can think of is where that would be a thing would be in like a Force vision or something that Vader's got like going on in his head. I'm not entirely sure if it's something that exists, but I will look into it and get back to you.
Yeah, it would be cool though.
Yeah, it would be very cool.
Even if it doesn't really fit.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things where it's just like, this breaks canon, but it'd be fun to see. Just do a demo reel, Just be like, make it a Legends thing.
It's Star Wars Holiday Special canon.
Yeah, exactly. Like when you were talking about watching the Lego, playing the Lego game with no subtitles, the only thing I could think of was no subtitles on the Wookiees talking in the holiday special.
For like an hour and a half.
Yeah, it's like, what is happening? We're gonna, John, you and I are actually probably gonna be watching those very soon in the next couple of weeks.
I'll watch them all the time.
A friend of the podcast wants to see them. He's never seen them before. So
you guys must be very excited.
Yeah, well, I'll be bringing some liquid assistance to that particular viewing.
Probably was. Probably help you enjoy it that little bit more.
Yeah, just that little bit more. All right. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining us for this episode of Hoth Topics, a podcast about Star Wars. If you would like to send in a question, comment, or just general sounds or letters at us, you can find us at hothpod@gmail.com, or you could tweet at us at Hothpod. You can find all of our podcasts and all of our additional content, such as costume articles, op-eds, anything like that, on our website, HothTopicsPodcast.com. If you want to get a hold of me specifically, Ian, I am at HothPodIan on Twitter. Harry, where can the audience find you?
I mean, John, is it all right with you? I'd like to permission. Just make sure I've got consent to make this plug.
I'll let it go this time.
Ooh, okay, cool. I was a bit of tension there, but off the hook feels good. All right, so my name's Harry, and as has been mentioned, I host a podcast called The Ranked List of Everything. So if you wanted to listen to a London boy rank things, then that's the place to go and do it. I get a new guest on every week, which includes Ian. I think Ian was on episode 4 or 5. I cannot quite remember which one. 5? That was the one.
Pretty sure I was 4.
Oh, 4 or 4? It was one of those two. That
it was definitely one of those two.
Definitely one of those two. And I hope to get him back soon. And if John wanted to come on at any point, I'd love to have him on as well. So that's a little bit of a double sizzle for everyone here. So there you go. Sizzly. You can probably find us on Spotify, iTunes. If you just Googled The Ranked List of Everything, I'm sure I'll come up in some way or another. If you wanted to find me on Twitter as well, you can find it from there. It's @_RLOE. So yeah, thank you for that. I think that's all I need to plug for today. Maybe it'll be in the description. Who knows? I won't push my luck. I'm not force sensitive. I can't tell these things. Maybe there'll be a link to something else, like the Star Wars Holiday Special, or a bootleg copy of what was that really bad film? That Henry film, the Russian one, where it's all in first person. Maybe there'll be a link to a bootleg copy of that. No one knows what's going to be in there. Hardcore Henry, that's the one. Yeah, maybe that'll be in the description. Hopefully, my podcast will be in the description. Who knows? Maybe.
No, you know what? Now we're only going to put in a link to Hardcore Henry.
Well, I haven't seen that film, so I'm clicking on that link. So thanks for that. This was all a clever ploy.
It's Sith trickery from the shadows. We'll definitely throw up links to where you can find Harry in our description. Thank you so much for coming on. It was a real pleasure having you. I'd love to have you on again in the future.
I'd love to be back.
Excellent. That does it for this episode of Hot Topics. I've been Ian. Joining me this week has been Harry.
Okay, I didn't know if I was supposed to say anything there.
Nah,
Yeah, usually I say something about how I'm not actually going to use my name, but I'm not this week.
Okay.
Not at all. I'm going to try.
Cool.
And that was John. Thank you, everybody. We will see you next time.
Bye.
Outro. It's the outro.
I do pride myself on being a West Ham United supporter.
Oh, well, there you go. I mean, it's one of the worst teams you could possibly support, but good on you, mate.